Thank you for joining us at ChristianPhotoshops.com. Today we're going to be doing a Photoshop tutorial, and this one is going to be based on the Bible verse Psalm 119 verse 105, and that says, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." And the whole point of this Photoshop tutorial is going to be to create an image that represents that Bible verse, and what I'm envisioning is a kind of a surreal image with a very large Bible with a doorway and a glowing light coming out of the Bible, and then a miniaturized person would be walking through that door. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got my canvas, my blank canvas is already open, so we're ready to go ahead and start adding pictures into that. Let me show you what we'll be working with. First of all, we have a picture of the Bible. It's just a picture of a Bible open up, standing on a desk, and just snapped a quick picture of it. We also have a kind of a wooden texture, wooden board texture that's going to be used as the ground for this image. We have a background, which is just a picture of the sky at sunset that I snapped a few weeks ago. And then finally we have a model that's going to be walking, and we're going to put her into the picture, and she's going to be walking through the doorway in the Bible. So let's go and get started. Like I said, we have our canvas open right here. The first thing I want to do is go ahead and work on the background. So let's go ahead and add the sky picture into the canvas. So just click on your sky, drag it right over to your canvas, and we're going to resize it and pretty much fill up the entire canvas. Okay. That looks good right there. Let's leave it right there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to have to add a ground to the image. So let's go to our ground texture, which is in this case the wooden texture. So just click on your ground texture, bring it over to your canvas, and now we have our ground texture. And what we're going to do is I prefer the wooden boards to kind of go north and south rather than east and west. So what we're going to do is rotate that. So go to Edit, Transform, rotate 90 degrees. That looks good. And what we're going to do is fill it to the entire width of the canvas. Okay, put it about like that. And then I'm going to zoom out so I can see the entire wooden picture, and we're going to create a floor based on this wooden texture. And the way to do that is go to Edit, Transform, and go to Perspective. And all you're going to do is grab the bottom corner, slide it out, and you are changing the perspective of this wood so it's flattened out, and it's going to be more of a floor type of perspective. So about like that looks pretty good. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the bottom of the wooden texture and pull it up just like that, and I'm going to pull this part down about like that. Alright, that looks good. So we have a really stretched out image of the wooden texture, and we're going to go ahead and transform that. And there's a whole lot of information outside of our canvas, and we do not need any of that information. So just to make our computer run a little bit faster, we're going to crop this image. Just crop it the way it is right there, and now our wooden texture is no longer outside of the canvas, it's confined to that canvas. So that just makes that file just a little bit smaller, doesn't strain the computer too much. So we'll go ahead and crop that. Alright, that looks pretty good. What I'm going to do is go to my sky layer, and I'm going to bring this up just a little bit to get more of that information of the sky. A lot of nice colors in the bottom, don't want to get rid of that. So I'm probably going to put it about right there or so, just to get a little bit more of the sky into the background. Now the wooden texture, it looks fine, but the very edge of it is has a very harsh edge to it. I don't like the way that looks. So what I'm going to do is create a mask on the wooden texture, get a nice large smooth brush, and I'm going to paint black onto the mask right at the edge. And that way that's going to kind of smooth out the edge of the wooden texture so it doesn't have that nice that rough ending. And you're going to see some of the horizon in the background on the sky, and that doesn't look right. So we're going to fix that in a second. But let me go ahead and smooth out the edges right here. Alright, that looks good right there. And we can see the horizon in the sky. So what we're going to do is just kind of pull that down just a little bit. Alright, so that looks a little bit different. Still looks a little weird, but what we're going to do is I'm going to go on top of all these layers, and I'm going to create a layer of fog or mist. And all I'm going to do is pick a color, pick one of these orange colors in the image, kind of a yellowish, orangish, pinkish color. And I'm going to set my opacity down to about 25%. And I'm going to paint a straight line over the edge of the horizon. So all I'm going to do is just click here, hold down Shift, and click here. That looks good. Then I'm going to make a little bit larger brush. Do the exact same thing in the same spot. Just going to draw a straight line at the horizon of this pinkish color. Okay, that looks good. And then one more, just a little bit larger, from here to here. Alright, that looks pretty good. This is kind of creating a fog or a mist kind of look on the edge of the horizon, so it kind of looks like the ground kind of goes on forever and it doesn't just stop abruptly. And so we're just going to leave it like that. Now, the mist that we just drew is kind of an orange pinkish color, and the sky is a very deep blue. And you can leave it like that if you want to, but I'm going to tone that blue down just a little bit to match the color a little bit better. So I'm going to go click on my sky layer, go to my adjustments layer, and add a photo filter. And I'm just going to pick an orange or kind of a pinkish color, kind of the same color I picked for the fog and the mist. And I'm just going to make the sky just match that color just a little bit better. Not going to go crazy with it, just a little bit more tint. So here's before and after, just a little bit of a tint. And the same thing to the wood texture. I'm going to add another photo filter to that one. And the same thing, I'm just going to create a nice orange glow to it. Not too much, just a little bit, just kind of match all these colors together. Alright, that looks pretty good right there. We got a nice background, so we can start putting everything else in it. Before I do that, I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call it background. Then I'm going to put all of those files, those layers I just created, I'm going to slide that into the background and kind of close that off, because we're not going to be working on the background for a while now. So just go ahead and put those in a folder, and we'll come back to them later if we need to make any edits. So we're going to add the Bible in next. I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. And we're going to add the Bible into this picture. So let's go to our Bible picture. Now the Bible is sitting on the desk and it is not cut out, so we're going to have to cut that Bible out so we can bring it right into the picture. The best way I like to cut out is go over to your quick selection tool. Go ahead and click that. And all you have to do is just paint on the edges of the Bible. And we're pretty much just going to draw a selection around the Bible, and with the quick selection tool, Photoshop is going to make an educated guess of where the edges are. So we're going to paint all of that, and then we're going to go back and paint some of the spots that missed, especially around the cover. Okay. Alright, and just in a couple seconds we got a really nice selection of the Bible. I'll kind of zoom in just a little bit to make sure it selected everything. So that looks good. That looks good. You could also do this using the pen tool and creating a selection around it that way, and that's fine. I like the quick selection tool because it does a great job in a very small amount of time, and it looks like we have a really good selection of the Bible very quickly. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're pretty much going to just slide this right into our canvas. So just pick it up and drag it and slide it right in. Now before we get started, I am going to do one other trick to kind of clean up the edges of the Bible. I'm going to go to Layer, Matting, Defringe, and I'm going to defringe it by 1 pixel. Okay, you may not even noticed anything there, but what that did is it just pretty much cleaned up all the edges when we did the quick select tool, and there may have been a couple stray pixels that were out of place, and that kind of just cleans that up a little bit. So we got our Bible. That Bible's a little too big for this scene, so we're going to just size it down just a little bit, maybe about that size right there. I think that looks good. About right there, that looks good. Alright, so we got our Bible. I'm going to go ahead and name that layer Bible. Alright, but you can tell that the Bible is just sitting there, it's sitting on the wood, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. People would look at this and know that it's photoshopped very quickly. So one really fast way to make it look more realistic is to add a shadow underneath it. So we're going to create a new layer. Make sure it's underneath the Bible layer. I'm going to go and rename it. We're going to call this one Shadow. And the quickest way, the easiest way I know to paint a shadow that looks realistic is just to select a black color, make your brush fairly small, and then let's make our opacity about 20% or so. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be painting lines up under the Bible to make it look like it's sitting on this wooden texture. So with the 20% opacity, what that's going to do is every time you paint, it's going to be 20%, and then when you paint on top of it, it's going to be 40%, and then when you paint on top of that, it's going to be 60%, and it's going to be darker and darker. So I'm going to go ahead and start painting under the Bible and not picking up the mouse. So all of that right there is 20%. You can hardly see it. Then I'm going to click again and then paint on top of that, and it's a little bit darker. Paint outside the Bible just a little bit, and then paint again. And the shadows are always going to be the darkest, the closest to the object. So there's hardly any light that's reaching underneath these pages right here. So the shadow is going to be almost completely black. So just keep painting under there, darker and darker right under the Bible, a little bit lighter right outside the Bible. So that looks good right there. Same thing under this part of the page. Dark right under the pages, and then not as dark the further away you get from the page. Right back in here, there's going to be hardly any light that gets back in that little crevice, so we're going to paint that part pretty dark right there. Okay, that looks good, and then just paint a nice little thin line under these pages right here. Just kind of give it some depth. Okay, and then we'll go over to this side. Same thing, just paint a nice little 20% shadow under here, then pick up and draw it again. And just make it so it's almost completely black right under the Bible, and then the further you get out from the Bible, the shadow can be a lot lighter. Alright, I think that looks pretty good right there. Let's double check this. Alright, let's back up and see how that looks. Alright, so now it looks like the Bible is pretty much sitting there. We can also always go in and add a mask to your shadow and kind of fix the spots that you may have painted too much. Like right in there. Okay, so what we created just there is our surface shadow right underneath the Bible where no light is attaching, is getting to the wood. The next shadow we're going to make it right on top of it. We're going to call this, we'll call it light shadow. And this shadow is going to be based on the light source of the picture. The light source is back here. It's the sun setting, and so it's a very light, kind of a faint light source, but it is in the back. So there is going to be a natural shadow that kind of goes from this side of the picture to this side of the picture. So we're going to draw that shadow in there right now. So how we're going to do that is we're going to use the same 20% opacity, but we're going to make the brush just a little bit bigger. And all I'm going to do is just paint the way that I envision the light going, which is kind of northwest to southeast in this picture. And so just kind of paint a very small 20% shadow in that direction. Again, the closer you are to the object, the darker it's going to be, and the lighter, the further away it's going to be. So I'm going to make this shadow a little bit darker than it really would be, and I'm going to tone it back in a little bit. But make sure that you get the darkest part of the shadow near the object and the lightest part of the shadow away from the object. Alright, so that looks good right there. It's really too dark, so all I'm going to do is make a mask and just tone all of that down. Alright, that looks good. I'm going to make a new folder and put my shadows in there. So I'm just going to make a new folder, call it shadows. I'm going to put both of the light shadow and the regular shadow in there. And now if you click off your shadow and on your shadow, you can tell the big difference that just a small shadow makes on the Bible. So without your shadow and with your shadow. Alright, so that looks pretty good. We got our shadow in place. Another thing we could do, if you don't want the Bible right there, if you want it on the left side of the page or the right side of the picture, what you can do is just click the Bible and the shadows, and you can move it over here to the left side of the image if you wanted to create a picture where you can have maybe some text on this side, or you can move it all the way to the right side of the picture if you wanted to do something over here. We're going to do it centered for this picture, but all you got to do is just click your elements, the Bible and the shadows, and you can move it to wherever you want to. We're going to go and add the model in next. So let's go to the woman's picture. Same thing we did to cut out the book. We're going to do that to cut out the model. So we're going to do our quick selection tool. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and we're going to just start painting around her. Just going to paint a nice rough outline. Photoshop does a really great job of selecting the edges. Okay. It picked up more than it needed to right here, so just change your tool to the minus and it's going to delete part of that selection. Looks good right there. And then we minused too much of it, so what we're going to do is we're going to add back. That looks good. That looks good. Alright, and this selection doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to fine tune it in a few minutes, but make sure you just kind of get a nice good rough outline. There's some hairs right here that aren't in the selection, so I'm going to kind of pull this out just a little bit. Make sure that pretty much everything you want in the picture is in the picture, and then we're going to fine tune the selection in a moment. Alright, that's a pretty good selection. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good right now. So what we're going to do, the best way to cut out a person, especially a person with kind of stray hairs going everywhere, what I like to do is go to Window, Masks, and then do your Add a Pixel Mask. This little button right here. So click that. That's going to delete everything in the picture except what you selected. So the entire background is deleted, the selection is remaining. Then click on Mask Edge, and this is going to open up a window where we can adjust the edges. You can see where around the face and around the hair did okay, but didn't do great. So what we're going to do is take your radius, move that up just a little bit, maybe go to 10. We'll go to about 20 actually. Click on Smart Radius. Actually, in this case, we're not going to do Smart Radius. It actually does pretty good without the Smart Radius. Alright, so that's a pretty good selection right there, but what I'm going to do around the hair part, there's some stray hairs in here that don't have a great selection. So all you're going to do is take this tool right here, and you're going to paint where those little hairs are. So paint right in there, paint right out here, paint right around the edge of the hair and the scalp. Alright, that looks good. And what it does is it grabs all those little bitty hairs and kind of makes it look more realistic when we start sticking her into another picture and all those little hairs are included. We'll go down to the feet. The feet are going to need some help in just a minute, and we'll do that in another mask. That looks pretty good right there, so what I'm going to do is hit OK. Alright, that looks good. And now what we're going to do is we have a mask over the model, and what we're going to do is we're going to have to create a layer and fill it with black. And you can kind of see the spots where Photoshop took out more than it should have taken out. For example, right here on the shoulder, we're going to have to paint some of that back right there. So just paint back the parts that Photoshop took out. That looks good. And then down here at the feet as well, it kind of took more of the skin off that we needed. So all you got to do is just take a white brush on your mask and just paint it back. The girl in this picture is going to be very small, so you don't have to worry about every single little pixel. They're not going to be noticed, especially once we size her down. But try to get a pretty good selection around her body so it's more believable. Just paint her toes back just a little bit. And then right here under her feet, you can tell where the carpet kind of blended in and it didn't cut out the carpet. So take your black brush, just get rid of that carpet texture. Alright, that looks pretty good. So we've got the woman selected. Let's go ahead and apply the mask. And then before I move it, I'm going to do the same trick I did earlier. Go to Layer, Matting, Defringe, and 1 pixel. That looks good. And what that's going to do is just clean up all those little pixels that we didn't get earlier. So everything looks good. We got our woman deselected from the background. We're going to drag her into our canvas. Just pull her right here in the canvas. Going to size her down just a little bit. Actually, a little bit more than that. We're going to make her really small, make the Bible look even bigger. So we're going to go about that size. And I want to go in the other direction. So we're going to transform her. Maybe about right there. Alright, I think I want to move the Bible and the shadows back just a little bit. Okay, just about like that. And you can tell when I move the shadows that I got a nice hard edge right there, and we need to get rid of that. All you got to do is create a mask on your shadows folder. Just to erase the edges right there. Alright, that looks good. So I'm going to move the woman up just a little bit higher. She's going to go more or less right here. Maybe just slightly larger. Okay, about right there. That looks pretty good. Now the same issue we have with the woman we had with the book. She looks like she's just stamped there. it doesn't look like she belongs in the scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a shadow underneath her, just the same way we added the one under the book. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer to woman. I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to draw a shadow under her feet. So let's create a new layer underneath her. We'll call it woman shadow. Just grab your brush, do a really small brush, and your opacity, we're going to do it about 20% again. And then just draw a nice shadow where there should be a shadow. So right here under the arch of her foot would be a shadow. Right behind her foot would be a shadow. Right under the arch of her foot back here, there would be a shadow. And then obviously right under her foot, make it really dark. And then the further away you go, make it a little bit lighter. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is make my brush a little bit bigger. And I'm going to paint just a really, really rough outline. Does not have to mirror the shape of her body at all. Just kind of a nice little blob back here. Okay, I'm going to make it a lot darker than it needs to be, and then we're going to tone it down a little bit. So dark really close to the body, light away from the body. Okay, that looks alright. It's overdone, it's really dark. What I'm going to do is tone it back down. So go to your mask and then just start toning it down. So light away from the body, dark right underneath the body. Alright, let's back out and see how that looks. Alright, that looks a lot better. It looks like she actually is in the scene right now. We could go back and fine tune that shadow just a little bit more though. Make another layer on top, and let's make a little bit darker shadows right here under her foot. And then right behind her foot, and then right under her foot. Alright, that looks pretty good right there. Let's back out. Alright, that looks pretty good. Not a perfect shadow, not a perfect picture of what she would look like, but based on the light source that we have in the background, that's about as dark as the shadow would be. We're actually going to add another light source later with the door, and that will change the shadow a little bit, and we'll kind of tweak that later. But right now, that's a pretty good fit. So let's go ahead and start working on the door. Before I do that, let me put the woman in another folder just to keep me organized. Call this woman, and we'll put the woman and the two shadows in there. Alright, we're going to be creating a door now, and what I'm going to do is create a new layer, go to my polygon lasso tool, change my color to white, and all I'm going to do is draw a nice rough outline of where a door would be in the Bible. So just a nice rectangle shape right here, just a rough outline. I'm going to fill it with white. And now we have a door, and you can kind of change the perspective of the door kind of so it fits the shape of the Bible just a little bit better. Maybe make it even bigger. Yeah, let's make it a little bit bigger. That looks good. Alright, so we have a nice rough outline of the door right here. And we're just going to use that as kind of a base is how to create the opening to the Bible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Bible layer, and then I'm going to add a mask, and I'm going to control click that door I just created, so there's a selection over the door. But now I'm on the Bible mask, and I'm going to paint over in black. First of all, I'm going to delete, not delete, but I'm going to make that rectangle that we just drew invisible. But I'm going to go on my Bible layer with that selection, and I'm going to paint in black where that door was. And so what I'm doing is I'm erasing part of the Bible in that shape of that rectangle that we drew. And then deselect. And now we have a nice cutout of the Bible based on that rectangle door we cut out. So we could just leave it like that and the woman could walk straight through the Bible. That's not what we're doing for this picture, but that's how you would do that if you wanted her to go straight through the Bible. But we're going to go ahead and work on this door right here. I don't like the way that the door is cut out. It looks like it was cut with very sharp scissors, and it's very nice, just straight edges. I don't really like that so much. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of adjust the doorway. So I'm going to stay on my mask right here. Say I'm going to click off the mask real quick. What we're going to do is we're going to paint the edges of the door with kind of a rough brush. And I have a brush. There's a lot of brushes you could use. This is just going to be kind of a paint splatter brush. Looks kind of like that. And we're going to use that to paint the outside of the door, and so it has more of a rough edge. So I could just paint like this, but there's a big pattern to that paint splatter, and I don't want a pattern. So all I'm going to do is go to my brush panel right here, click on Shape Dynamics, change my size jitter to 100%, change my angle jitter to 100%, and now when I draw, it's a nice random assortment of paint splatters, and so it'll kind of randomize the way that the door looks. So go back to your mask on your Bible, and all you're going to do, you already have the door cut out, all you're going to do is just paint around the door edges. So what that does is it just kind of roughens the opening to the Bible. So instead of it look like it was cut out of the book, it looks like it was kind of more ripped out. And you can paint, you know, kind of heavy in some spots, kind of lighter in other spots, however you want to do it. Or you could just leave it, you know, the way it is, just cut out in straight lines. I personally like the kind of the rough cut out like this, like it was kind of torn out. Alright, that looks pretty good right there. So now we just have a nice rough outline of the door. If you look at this picture though, you're going to notice kind of a flaw. You're going to notice that we cut the page out, but right here it looks like there's only one page in this Bible. We know there's not one page in the Bible. We know that there's hundreds of pages right here. So it's kind of a illusion right here that there's one page cut out going through the Bible. So we're going to kind of fix that. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use my lasso tool, go to my book layer or Bible layer, and I'm going to make a selection of all these pages right here. Not all the pages, maybe about like that. Alright, that looks good. And then copy that and paste it. And then pull those pages that you just copied below the book. And now what you do, you have this selection of pages that floating around that you can use. And so what we're going to do, we're going to go right here and we're going to put it right where these pages would be. So you can kind of distort the picture just a little bit so it looks like it kind of fits in a little bit better. Okay. So we're just kind of cheating right here a little bit. We're making it look like there's actual pages right here, and it's not a perfect cheat, but it's enough to kind of make it look a little bit more realistic. So I'll stick that right there. There's some problem spots down here, so we're going to go ahead and take care of those. Alright, and then I'm going to take my brush that I still have selected, and then I'm going to just kind of rough up the edges of these pages real quick. So just kind of going with the theme that like it was ripped out. It wasn't cut out with a sharp knife, it was kind of ripped out. So just kind of paint on the edges right here. Alright, that looks good. So let's back out, let's see how we look. Alright, now it looks a little bit more believable. She's walking through a Bible that's been kind of ripped open, but the whole point of this picture is the light that comes from the Word, not walking through the Bible. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a light source that comes out of the Bible. So what we need to do is we need to create, okay, before we do this, let me go and make another folder, call it Bible. I'm going to put the Bible and then those extra pages we put in there and put that in the Bible. Okay, so we have four folders right now: the woman, the Bible, the shadows under the Bible, and then the background. So we have all of those, and we can change any of those if we need to or move them around. We're going to create a light behind the Bible now. So I'm going to create a layer under the Bible. I'm going to create a light, and I'm going to use a brush, a large brush, and it's going to be white, and it's going to be 100% opacity. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint it right behind the Bible, right there. And actually, I might even make it bigger. So I'm just going to drag that brush I did, just make it even bigger. Okay, so we got a nice bright light source right at the center of the doorway. And you can see the light spilling behind the Bible over here, and the light's coming from the pages, it's not coming from behind the Bible. So what we want to do is delete these parts of the light that's outside behind the Bible. So just make a mask, use your black brush, and then just delete these parts that are behind the Bible. Okay, so now it looks like the light's coming from that door, but it doesn't look like it's coming from behind the Bible. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a light source in front of the Bible. So create a layer on top of the Bible, and in this case is on top of the woman as well. Go back and make a large brush, and you're pretty much just going to paint it right where you painted the other one. This is going in front of the Bible this time though. So just right at the doorway, just paint it right there. And I actually might make that a little bit bigger as well. Okay, that looks good. Alright, so now we have a light source behind the Bible, which is that one, and we have a light source in front of the Bible. And I'm going to add another light underneath the Bible and kind of clean up some of these spots right here. So I'm going to make a little bit smaller brush, a little bit lower opacity, and just kind of paint right in here, right where the door is coming out. And we need to kind of fix the lighting source right here. See, you can see the lights coming through the Bible, but we got some weird things going on right here, and that's because the light is going in spots where light wouldn't go. So what you're going to do is create a mask, and you're going to delete part of that light that's in spots it shouldn't be. So go on your mask for the lights, all your light files, and just kind of delete the parts where there wouldn't be any light hitting. So like this side of the Bible right here, light's not coming over here. So delete part of that light that's shining right here. Kind of delete that out. Same thing for the light above the Bible. Just kind of delete that out just a little bit. Alright, that looks good. The whole point of this is to kind of make it a little bit more realistic. And I can kind of see a flaw right there with part of our Bible. So let's create a mask on those pages right there and just kind of fix that just a little bit. Alright, that's a good thing about layers. Anytime you see something that doesn't look right, just go back, select it, and fix it. Especially with mask, you can always edit the mask. Alright, that looks good right there. I'll turn that down just a little bit. Alright, so let's back up, see how we look. Looks pretty good right now. One big flaw that I notice is that the light source is coming from the Bible. The pages of the Bible are white, which is fine, because they would be. But these edges of the Bible right here, they would not be this light. They'd be very dark because the light's just not hitting them. So I'm going to go back to my Bible layer. I'm going to create an adjustment layer right above it. I'm going to use my curves adjustment layer, clip it to the Bible. So your Bible can get really dark or really bright, but you just want to make your Bible a lot darker. And it's making the entire Bible darker, and we don't want to do that. So all we got to do is just mask out the center of the image. And that way the pages, the open pages, are going to be bright, but the edges of the pages are going to be dark, which would more properly represent the light that we've created. Okay, so let me just show you really quick what we did right there. This is without the curves, and this is with the curves. So it just makes the dark part of the pages kind of separate from the light part of the pages. Alright, another problem is the woman. Her lighting on her body does not match the lighting of the picture. So what we're going to do is the front part of her body needs to be light. The back part of her body needs to be not as light. So what we're going to do, pretty much like what we just did with the Bible, I'm going to create another adjustment layer above the woman. Let's do, we'll do curves for this one. Make her really dark, or a lot darker. Okay, that looks good. And then what you're going to do on your mask is you're going to delete part of that curve adjustment, but you're only going to delete the front part of her body. So the front part of her body will not have that curves adjustment because the light from the Bible is hitting her front side, but it's not hitting her back side. So like the top of her foot right here would be hitting all that light, but the back of her leg would not be hitting that light. So you kind of just have to take your time and paint the way the light would fit. That looks good right there. Alright, we're going to do another one. Go to levels. Same thing, we're just going to darken her up just a little bit. And then paint the spots that should not be darkened, which would be the front of the body. Alright, and then finally we're going to create another curves adjustment, and we're going to brighten her. Curve very bright. And then I'm going to invert the curves the mask on the curves, and then I'm going to paint with white the front part of her body. So we're just making the front part of her body very bright so it will match the light source coming from the Bible. So, and you could spend a long time doing this and making it a lot more perfect than I'm going to do for this tutorial, but you get the idea that the front part of the body should be light, the back part of the body should be a lot darker. So let's back up. Alright, so that looks a little bit better. You can tell how the back part of her body is a lot darker with these settings, as it should be, because the light's not hitting it, but the front part of her body is very white. And you can always adjust these adjustment layers as you see fit. You maybe want to tone it down just a little bit. Looks good right there. Another trick you can do is you could duplicate the layer. Oops. And then you could take the woman and you can put her on the very top of the picture, which this is her above the light. that light source that we created in front of the Bible. So that put the woman in front of that light source. And then what you could do is you could mask this one, and then you could mask the front part of her body that way too. And then you could maybe lower the opacity just a little bit. Alright, so that looks good. The woman's light characteristics kind of more represent the light a little bit better than it did to start with. So we're ready to move on to the next step. And before we do that, one thing I did want to do is the doorway to the Bible. I wanted to add just a couple more effects to that. So I've got a brush that I like to use. It's just a cracked brush, and so it looks kind of like that. It's just a cracked brush texture. You can find a bunch of these on the internet. But what I'm going to do is use that brush texture. And I'm going to go into the door, and kind of how we masked it out earlier with the paint splatters, I'm going to do the same thing with this brush. So just kind of click in different spots. Make it look like it's kind of got a torn, the pages are torn just a little bit. You can always rotate your brush a little bit and go to different directions. And this just adds a little bit more effect to the picture. This looks like the pages are just tearing apart. So that looks good right there. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the lighting behind the Bible. We have a really bright light source coming right out of the Bible, these pages right here, but there's no darkness on the outside of the Bible, so it doesn't even look like the light source right here is even working very well. So what we're going to do is go behind the Bible. Just take a brush, just a big soft brush, using black. Lower your opacity to about 20-25%, and just paint opposite of where the Bible is. So the spot where the light's coming from the Bible is going to create a shadow behind the Bible, because the light source is brighter inside the Bible than it is around here. So I'm going to paint this purposely darker than it needs to be. Just so you kind of see what I'm going for right here. So outside the Bible, outside of the reach of that light is dark, but the inside is light. Now that's completely too dark, and I understand that. I'm going to go ahead and fix that in a second. But you see what I'm going for is inside this little area right here is going to be bright. Outside the Bible is going to be dark. So go ahead and mask that out, and then just tone it down a little bit. Don't tone it out completely. Alright, that looks good. So it just looks like that the Bible is creating a little bit more light by making the background darker. Okay, the last thing I want to do before we start working on coloring is I want to work on that shadow below the woman one more time. So just create an image right below the shadow, right below the woman. Let's zoom in. Maybe not quite that much. And I just want to make a little bit darker shadow here. So I'm just going to paint with the brush. Just a nice shadow like this. And like I said, this does not mirror her shape or anything, and it's not supposed to. The light source probably wouldn't represent her shape very well, so just kind of make a blob out here. but that light source is a lot brighter than the sun, so we're going to make it just a little bit darker here, and then we're going to tone it down just a little bit as well. And darken it right in there. Alright, so we're ready to start coloring the picture now. Actually, let me fix the shadow just a little bit more. Okay, so let's go ahead and start coloring the picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer above everything else, and I'm going to go to Image, Apply Image, and what this does is it pretty much just flattens all of your images below the picture, and it creates a new layer of that rendering. So we got a whole image of everything below here, and I'm going to go to Filter, Other, High Pass. I'm going to click on, we'll do 1.5, and I'm going to do Overlay. That's just going to sharpen everything in the picture. All the elements of the picture just got a little bit sharper. And now we're going to do some coloring things, which is kind of my favorite part of the whole manipulation part of the image. There's a lot of ways you can color the image. I love to use gradient maps, so I'm going to go ahead and start working on that. The first gradient map I'm going to do, just go down here to Adjustment Layers, do Gradient Map. I'm going to click on Black and White, and I'm going to change the blend mode to Soft Light, and I'm going to turn it down to about 10. We'll do about 20%, and all it does is just adds a little bit of contrast. So there's before and after. Not very noticeable, but it is a little bit noticeable. Next thing we're going to do is go to your adjustments layer, go to Exposure, boost up your exposure just barely 0.10, and then go to your gamma correction and go to about 0. Actually 0 would be too much. Let's go to about 0.65 and then tone that down just a little bit. Alright, that made it a little bit darker. So a lot more emphasis on the light and darken the background. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. Create a new layer above everything, and then I'm going to paint a radial gradient, and I'm going to use these colors right here. It's kind of a dark purple, 200636, and kind of a yellowish orange color, FFC 580. And I'm going to create a radial gradient, so it would kind of look like this. The yellow would be in the middle, surrounded by the purple in the outside. I'm going to start up here in the top left and go down to the bottom right, and so you have this large yellow circle right here, and it kind of fades in the purple, and I'm going to change that to Soft Light, and then I'm going to tone that down to about 60%, about 50%. So that adds just a little bit more element to the color. So that's before, this is after, before, after. Then I'm going to add another gradient map. And this time the colors are going to kind of be a blue to yellow. So we have a blue OC3151, and then kind of the dark yellow brownish color D9CAA5. And we're going to change that to color, and we're going to tone that down to about 15%. Then I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to fill it with a dark turquoise color, just any kind of dark turquoise color here, 07353D. Fill that layer with that color, and then I'm going to go to Lighten, and I'm going to change it down to about 25% or so. What that does is just gives a little bit of color to those dark shadows. I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to fill it with a bluish color. We'll call it 235487. And I'm going to go to exclusion. And then I'm going to turn that down to about 20. We'll do about 17%. Alright, so I like my color so far. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go to apply image again. Create a new layer that has all my images below flattened. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my image, adjustments, shadows and highlights, and I'm going to make this kind of into an HDR type picture and kind of make the shadows come back and bring the highlights back in there and kind of just go for a really weird look right here. Just kind of bring all the detail in. I'm going to change it to, I'm going to desaturate, change it to black and white, and I'm going to go to multiply. And I'm going to tone that down to about 25%, give or take. And finally, duplicate that one more time. Change it to overlay. Go to filter, other, high pass, 1.5, and you can do that at 100%. So that's pretty much the gist of the entire image. You may not like some of the coloring, and if you can always just put all these coloring edits that you make, and you can put them into a folder, and then you can just click that folder off and on and kind of see the difference that the coloring makes. This is kind of more of a vintage type color. You may want more of the brighter, colorful picture, or you can do any type of color and edit you want. Another thing you can do is you can also just take and move everything around in the scene if you want to. If you want to move the woman and the Bible and the shadows around, you can just slide those wherever you want to. You're going to have to make a few adjustments to the lighting techniques, but you can move them pretty much wherever you want to go. Let's try this again. Yep, so you can move them pretty much wherever you want to go. If you want to go back in the background, if you want to go to the left, do right here and have more text on the right side, or if you want to move them over here and go to the left side, you can. So you can just move pretty much all of your elements anywhere you want to. And that's the freedom with working with layers. But I think we'll call this a finished image. I'm not going to add a Bible verse or anything like that, but the whole point of this Photoshop tutorial was to represent the verse Psalm 119:105, and that just shows that the light does come from the Word, and that we as Christians should follow the light out of the Word. And so this picture kind of represents that in a surreal way. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some things. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact us at any time. And check back at ChristianPhotoshops.com in the future, because we'll be doing many more of these pretty soon. So again, I appreciate it. If you have any questions, contact me, and I appreciate it.